Hello and welcome to part 3 of the GeekVerse Sidequest Game of the Year celebration. This is part 3, of course. We are where we're deciding on the best characters of the year. Not 5, we're going to do 10. I'll explain that a little bit. But I am your host, Adam Harcaster Dilmas, and I have with me again Dante here. We took a little break in between our levels, and characters for the fans are going to be a couple days apart. But you had a nice time. You got your Christmas tree. I don't even know if you mentioned that part of it.
Oh, we also decided let's do the Christmas tree another day. So we're gonna do that on Monday. But I did get some food, which will be very important. Fueled up for a good conversation.
I have my second cup of tea, separate from the one I had this morning, and I just pretty much played Neon White in between our recordings here, so just going hard on that game.
Not a bad one to fill the gap.
Yeah, so for anyone who just tuned into this as their first episode for some reason of the Game of Year stuff, the previous episode we did the best levels of the year. First episode we did visuals and music, and then the next episode is going to be the finale. It's just going to be our top 10 lists and a collective list as well. So that'll be a lot of fun. I forgot to shout this out last episode, but at some point in this episode, I'm going to throw to likely Kirklin, who's going to give you his game of the year. He played a lot of stuff, a lot of indies, a lot of those big popular games as well. So I'm very curious to see what he picks, actually. I think that's pretty spicy conversation on his part. And then other than that, thank you to Amanda for the music. Thank you for Taylor for all his hard work with the thumbnails this year. And yeah, I think I'm pretty much ready to get right into it. So we're doing best characters here. Best characters could be, maybe they're really well written, maybe they're just funny, maybe they're just cool, maybe you just gameplay wise really like them and you want to put them on the list for that.
Totally.
We're talking about video games here, so that's a whole other game, of course. And we're going to do this one a bit differently, so it'll probably be a bit easier than our previous ones, but we're going to do 2 sets of lists. We're going to do best debut characters, so that's just brand new characters in a game this year. And then we're going to do a separate best, what we're going to call it best appearance. So this is either characters that were introduced, and this is their appearance in a sequel, or for me, it's like maybe a couple Nintendo characters. It's like they're not really new, but I like their, a version of them in a game this year, that sort of thing. And we're going to see how that goes. I know Dante doesn't have a ton of those appearances necessarily, but I still think we'll have some good conversations all around here. Very quickly, our list last year, it's always fun to go back and look at these. Our best characters were the Stout / PO3 from Inscription, which really fun pick there. Colt and Juliana from Deathloop, so shout out to Deathloop for the double representation. And then we had Heisenberg from Resident Evil and Celine from Returnal. I mean, Returnal crushed it in our best of categories last year. So I saw it's coming to PC. Maybe I finally have the opportunity to play it here soon. If not, I'm probably getting a PS5 pretty soon here because there's
either way,
Death Stranding's coming, and I got to get a PS5 to play that at some point.
Too, so. Yeah, that's crazy too. But yeah, if there is a killer app for PlayStation 5, it's Returnal, and if you have not played it on PS5 or don't have a PS5, that PC version is going to look real nice. I'm telling you,
I think that's like the perfect game to pick up when I get the PS5. Like, come home to the store, that'd be like the first game that I play. Of course, there's Playroom as well, I'm sure, but yeah, I think that'll be the first one that I break in the new console with when I get it.
There's some cool controller gimmicks in that game that I feel like PS5 is still the way to play it.
Definitely. Okay, so let's get into it. I want to start with the debut characters. So these are fresh, new characters in the world of gaming. I'm gonna throw to you first. Who do you want to nominate first on our list?
I'm trying. Let's go for a character that I only have like one from that game, because there are a slew of these this time around that I have like 5 from the same exact game.
All right,
really well written characters in some of these. Yeah, exactly. So I want to shout out Burgle from Grounded. I love that dude. I know he's a weird one, but man, did he get a few chuckles out of me. So Burgle is the like robot that you meet kind of early on. It's one of the first NPCs you meet, if not one of the only NPCs in that game, that kind of push you on your way, and you're like, he tries to help you kind of resize yourself so you can go back and be a part of humanity again, and not be this tiny ant-sized human for the rest of your life. The cool part about Burgle, though, is that is not his original purpose. He was a chef, and his whole job was to make burgers. So his concept of what's going on in the world is kind of skewed, and he is occasionally making lots of cooking puns, which I thought were, I don't know, pretty funny throughout. But the fact that he is the one that's like your all-knowing, omniscient character that's telling you about stuff and leading you on your way, and you're getting these chips for him so he learns more and can kind of better guide you, I thought was pretty hilarious, because his base function is just to flip burgers, and I don't know, he's just it's a quirky dude, and I got a kick out of him.
I love it. This is a very Obsidian thing, because I feel like the Outer Worlds had one of the robots as a companion that had like lived in the storage closet, and then like New Vegas had that robot cowboy character as well. Yep. Like I feel like this is an archetype that they really like, and maybe the Pentiments and the Path of Exiles don't really have room for a character like that. But I feel like if they have the opportunity,
Pillars of Eternity.
Sorry,
POE.
I always mix those two.
I know, me too.
POEs. But yeah, it seems like if they ever have an opportunity to do a robot character like this, they are into it. It's so funny you mentioned this, because this is, if I have one negative thing about Grounded, it's that I find BURG.L so fucking annoying. No. For me, it's 100% the voice. It like nails on the shot. It's so annoying that I'm skipping through
robot voice.
I did not know he was a burger flipper, because I've just skipped through all of it. I'm
so funny to me. It's rare for me to meet a character that actually gets like a sincere chuckle out of me in a video game, and BURG.L
I'm sure
got just that.
Hey, it's Obsidian, so I'm sure the writing of it is good, but yeah, that's funny. That's like my one point of not liking that game, I guess. But shout outs to BURG.L.
So funny. All right, okay. He's not going to make it through the top 10, that's for sure. Clearly, I was going to say that's an adamant like first off super device.
Well, if we're taking our whole list of characters and splitting them into 2 separate 5, so who knows? Maybe there's room for BURG.L.
I don't know.
I'll go with another robotic character on the list. I actually have, now that I'm looking at my list, I think I have 4 robotic characters. So big year for the robots. But another one I'll bring up is a game that we've really not talked about at all to this point, and that is Grady from Aperture Desk Job. This I don't have a Steam Deck, of course, but I played through the entirety of this game at my friend's house, because it's like a half an hour long. Yeah. It's no surprise, because they've always had great writing in Portal and great characters, specifically robotic characters. But I just love Grady. He was such a fun companion to go through this thing with. They put so much more story into this thing than they needed to for what it is. And I love that he was kind of the one that guides you through it. So I was definitely a big fan of Grady. And, I can't think back to like a particular joke or moment necessarily, because that was quite a while ago that I played through it, but I still really liked that character.
Nice. Yeah, it was funny when you said when you brought up Aperture Desk Job, I was like, oh my god, that was one of those things that I picked up and got like super excited to play, but I was just so happy to have a Steam Deck that I rushed into a bunch of video games, and it kind of, I don't know how it's been a little bit, I guess.
It's confusing too, right? Because technically the Steam Deck was released last year, but not everyone had access to it. But then Aperture Desk Job was supposed to be the kind of game that
the opening app.
Yeah, thing. It's supposed to be that Astro's Playroom, but it didn't actually come out until like March or something of this year, I think. So kind of weird in that way too. I think it sounds like most people, by the time they had their Steam Decks, like this would have been kind of the first thing you do kind of thing, but not everyone would have had that experience. I think it is probably a good way to figure out that console and how the buttons work and the settings and things like that.
I'm trying to remember. I think I got my Steam Deck Q1 of this year, so it would have been right at that time. It would have been available immediately. Cool. So I think it was the first thing I played on it.
Nice.
All right. What's another one that I only have one character for? I'm gonna get very specific here in the beginning, because I know we're gonna like the second we open some of these games, it's gonna be like the floodgate's gonna open. Yeah. A Xenoblade character that I really, really love. There's actually like that game has a ton of fantastic characters, but like this one rose to the top so clearly that I didn't even put the other ones on my list, because I was just like, this is such an excellent JRPG character. And that character for me is Mio. She is you're in an ensemble cast of 6 different main characters essentially. But Mio has some of the some of the most pressure, I think, out of that entire group. Like some of them seem like they're just kind of along for the ride, and this character seems like there's serious stakes for her. So all of humanity in this game has a 10-year life cycle. They are pretty much they're pretty much come out of their like tubes. It's like the Matrix or something like that at like at like full like age. So they're all like 17, 18. Maybe no, they're younger than that. They're maybe like 14 or 15 when they come out of their I don't know, their tanks, and they only grow to be about 24, 25 years old. And Mio is in her 10th year. So there's all of these like worldwide stakes happening, and Mio kind of has this like personal grievance that she's dealing with as well, where she's just like, okay, we have all of these big problems at stake, and she wants to be a part of the solution to these problems, but she also knows that she's dying in the next couple months. And it is this race against the clock for her that's really, really depressing, honestly, in some moments, where you realize people are getting all excited and people are like cheering for themselves or having these moments where they feel like they really succeeded, and she never can feel that same kind of joy that they feel, because it just feels like one step closer to her finality. And I think ultimately I haven't finished Xenoblade 3 yet. Sadly, that game, I think I've talked about it a few times on the podcast, but there have been I did a marathon of Xenoblade games.
No one can blame you for how many you put all the effort in, and it's like it's just not enough.
Burnt out a little bit near the end, even though I was absolutely loving every second of Xenoblade 3, but I beat 1 and 2 right before I started 3, so I was just a little fatigued. But Mio, so far in her arc, I'm pretty far into the game. I'd say so far into her arc, she has shown just a level of poise that is pretty impressive for a character, considering everything that she's dealing with. And her supporting cast will come around her occasionally and realize that they're being insensitive towards what she's dealing with, which I think is a really cool personal moment to put these characters in often. Not to mention she's a cat girl, and I'm a big weeb, and I love anime bullshit. So cat girl is gonna
is
get.
That like one of the classic tropes?
Oh yeah.
Cat girl. Okay.
Oh,
I'm very out of it in that anime.
No worries. No worries. If you ever need a little anime knowledge, or just talk to an anime weirdo, it's I got you.
Sounds good. Is that Mio, Mio, Meo?
Yeah, Mio.
No H on the end or anything like that?
No, nothing crazy there.
Sounds good. Let's keep it on the cat theme. I gotta throw out the cat from Stray.
Oh, that's a good one.
Of course, this is just very cute protagonist to play as, a lot of fun. They have all those classic cat-isms of scratching on things or falling asleep places or knocking things off of other things. Just every perceivable cat thing that they could have done, they did. I feel like this is the best cat animation physics that I've ever seen in a video game. Obviously, they got to get it right if it's the protagonist you're jumping around platforming with, but they nailed it. And yeah, I mean, this is not one that they are having deep conversations or there's some big... I mean, there are like story twists, I guess, or dramatic things that happen. But since you're a cat, you're kind of a step removed from all of it. But still, love that cat. It's I think a big reason. Like, whatever you want to say about the gameplay, some people, I feel like people have almost turned on it a bit, where they're like, "Oh, we love Stray," but then it became like too popular, and then people started to turn on it. Yeah, and then it got all these nominations at the Game Awards, and people were kind of upset with that for some reason. But it's a fun game, fun cat character. I also, once again, throwing another robot out there, B12, who is your companion in that game. This is kind of where you get more dialogue, and there's also an interesting story twist with the character that I don't really feel the need to spoil. We'll see if we're getting down to it in terms of a top 5. Maybe we can bring it up or something, but I liked having B12 as a companion, and it had some unexpected twists in terms of that character's arc as well.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, big cat guy. So I was a sucker for that one as well. Clearly, right? Yes. So next up for me, I want to shout out Elster from Signalis. So Elster is your main character in Signalis. The setup for that game is pretty cool. You are a part of a 2-man team, and this whole corporation runs essentially in 2-man teams, and they're both androids of a sort. Elster are replicas, and then there are gestalts. So gestalts are like the soldiers, and replicas are like the supporters of those soldiers. Right. So in Signalis, your gestalt or the character you're supporting disappears after a crash landing, and Elster is like, I'm going to find my partner. And throughout her story, you start to learn lots of things about Elster that are humanizes her a lot, despite the fact that she is an android. And one of the main things that I found to be really, really engaging about her is her relationship with her Gestalt goes past just that programmed or emotional or not emotional, but professional connection that she has to her Gestalt. Like, they actually have a romantic relationship as well, which ends up showing itself in some really, really beautiful scenes of them. Like, apparently Elsters also have all of the replicas have their own things that they consider to be personality problems with them. And they'll get obsessive over specific topics. So some of them are very angry if you speak to them. Some of them are a little too friendly when you speak to them, and they'll obsess over communicating with other robots or other androids. And Elster, she gets very connected to music, and she gets very connected to people. So they say that you're supposed to isolate them. And obviously in this situation, they were not. So you also start to realize that she's having some flashbacks or some personality things that may be skewing her perception of the world heavily, which I think is really, really interesting with her. And then as you kind of progress through the game, you realize she's almost being called to this place in this world over and over and over again. And there's actually like multiple endings in this game, and each one is leading you towards this same area. And there is some things you learn throughout this process.
Leave it there, because the more you talk about this game, the more I'm like, oh, okay, I need to go back.
Signalis has some really neat stuff that happens. It does require a little bit out of you. Like, it's a 4 to 6 hour game, maybe 10 hours tops, but every time you play through the game, it changes drastically. And it's like Nier. A lot of people have played Nier, where you beat your A route and then you play your B route, and you realize that, like, oh, this isn't just I'm playing the game in a New Game Plus capacity. It's actually like adding tons of story every single time I play it through. Yeah. Signalis is the same way. Like, to get the full story of this game, it's going to take you at least like 4 runs, I think.
Crazy. How many have you done?
I'm 1.5 through. So I've played it for about 12 hours or so, and I'm like nearing the end of my second playthrough.
Interesting. Cool.
And the second playthrough is very cool. I'll just say
Is it like a New Game Plus, or do you start like just a fresh save and just do different stuff?
You start a new game after you beat it, and like the best way I can explain how different it is like you start the game on the first playthrough, and it's a crash landed ship. The second time you start a new game, you are still in space.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Like, there's big changes that happen that
I like that.
Totally almost feel like 100% different playthroughs.
That's interesting. Nice. Love that. Okay, next up, I am going to bring up the Hunter / just Hunter from Midnight Suns. I felt this is actually kind of a funny part about this game, is I feel like they should have just given the character the name Hunter, because that's a pretty generic name that we hear. But instead it's like, you are the Hunter, but then often people will just say Hunter. It's kind of a goofy thing, but in terms of other Midnight Suns characters, even though this is kind of a weird case, and we talked about this off cast, which is, are these debut characters or are these returning characters? Because someone like an Iron Man has been in a bunch of games, has been outside of games. This is this first iteration of this Iron Man, but we decided to lump those in with appearances, and this is kind of the debut part. So obviously Hunter is a brand new character. I think first off, this is a huge risk they took with this game, which is you're taking a beloved IP that's incredibly popular right now, and you're going to make the player character not one of those characters. You're going to try something new and something that is quite weird. And something that I also think is a good mix of has backstory but is blank slatey, so that you can kind of go in and fill in what kind of hunter you're going to be, that sort of thing. I've been playing with the woman, or the feminine voice, I guess you could say.
Interesting. And no Troy Baker in your life.
Is that Troy Baker for the...
Troy Baker is the male.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll save my Troy Baker time for more Death Stranding because he's in the sequel there too.
Yeah.
But in terms of at least the feminine voice, the voice acting is
Is it
great.
Matt Mercer? It's either Troy Baker or Matt Mercer. Sorry.
I feel like I've never
overlap in my
heard
head.
about it being Troy Baker, so that would be
Matt
that is
Mercer.
a
It
surprise.
has to be Matt Mercer. Sorry. I think it's Matt Mercer.
Okay, because I do listen to a podcast where Troy Baker's on frequently, and he's never mentioned it, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think I screwed up there. I'm pretty sure it's Matt Mercer. I'll double check.
Is that? But that's who you're playing with? Is
yeah,
Matt Baker there?
Matt Mercer.
That's the
Matt
joke
Mercer.
because you said.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's Matt Baker. You got it.
Wait, Matt Baker? Matt Mercer.
Troy Mercer.
Whoever the fuck it is, I don't even know because I'm playing with the other voice. Yeah, I think the voice acting is great. I like the character in general. Some of the stuff with the main plot, I feel like it just moves very slowly. So when I'm at the end of it, I feel like I'll actually be able to tell where I'm at with it. But so far, I'm really liking the character. And then moveset wise, since it kind of has that light dark path in terms of your dialogue choices and other choices, you'll get different moveset stuff. I'm more on the dark side of things. The character is just super strong and versatile because you have like supportive light side abilities and more dark side abilities. I'm really liking those dark side abilities that are a bit higher risk, high reward, I think, which is fun. But yeah, I'm really liking Hunter. I think, once again, big risk, and it totally worked, and I think makes the game better for it. So shout out to Hunter.
You get an opportunity to learn about the cast of the Marvel cast in general from a blank slate perspective, which is good. This guy's been gone for 300 years. He doesn't know any of these people. Mm-hmm. So it's a good way to have them introduce themselves, because if it was just like, I'm playing Spider-Man and he already knows all these people, then there's no opportunity for them to kind of explain their reason for even being in this fight. And it is Matt Mercer. Sorry. Okay. Matt Mercer. Confirmed Matt Mercer. Man.
Take that, Troy Baker. See you in
right. So, all right. I guess I have to open this door now.
Open the door.
Actually, I got one that it's actually. I think you'd be surprised to see this one on my list.
Okay.
I wanted to shout out the Pigman from Weird West.
Oh, I'm so glad you did. His name is Clarence Quig or something like that. Yeah. I only know that because it's on my list too. So I'm
very cool. Very cool. So I this was just like I got 3 playthroughs into Weird West. I got through 3 of the characters, so I didn't finish this game, but I found the Pigman to be just like absolutely such a good switch up from your previous character. And his backstory is pretty messed up. He gets like turned into one of these, originally was a human, and he gets turned into one of these like mutilated pig people. Yeah. And he is just like out for revenge, trying to figure out who did this to him. And I found that to be a really compelling reason for this man moving through the world. I guess they all have a really good reason. Like the I can't remember the first girl's name. It's like Angela
Jane Bell.
Jane, yeah. And Jane is like, you killed my dog. She's on some like what's it? I'm blanking on words all left and right today. A
lot of tragedy happens.
John Wick. He's on some John Wick stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there we go. Whereas the Pigman, I think, actually had something like truly horrible happen to him, and he's trying to figure out what's going on. I think you might be able to like talk about him a little bit more, because I think Weird West like pulled you in deeper than it did me. But I thought he was a really, really cool MC, and just running around as a Pigman is pretty wild. Who will just like, he's entirely like melee focused, so he just like goes around just like brutally messing people up, but then
corpses to heal, which is great.
But then he has the alternate problem of not being able to move through towns, which is I think
the
pretty
stigma of it,
cool to just kind of like switch up the gameplay you've been experiencing with the previous character, where she's able to talk to people in town no problem, and now you're just like, oh my god, every single place I go I have to kind of like sneak around and find clues without really communicating with lots of people. And I just thought that was like really, really cool to switch it up with him.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I think Weird West does a great job of all the characters you're playing with have a unique play style, and I think him or Across Rivers was another character who has like a tornado ability and other fun stuff like that, were probably my favorites. But I think for me, just because of the backstory of the character and that you were playing this pigman who are kind of set up as these atrocious beasts and stuff, it gave me what's the word? It just gave me freedom as a player to want to engage with the game in a different way, and that's why I think it's so smart. Where in something like Dishonored, like maybe you pick a playstyle and you kind of stick with that and do a whole playthrough with that. Where since this game splits its one playthrough across 5 characters, you can do different playstyles within that. And when I was doing the Clarence playthrough, I was just a fucking madman. I was going through, I like massacred an entire town. I was much more savage and vicious with my gameplay. And yeah, the game allows you to do that. You can kill like every single NPC in that whole game, and the story will have some other way around that you can still complete it, which is great. But yeah, I love the variety, and I put Jane Bell and Across Rivers on my nomination list as well. Since you nominated him, I think we'll just keep him on the list, and that can be the Weird West rep here. But yeah, I do love this game. I love the characterization. I think one of my criticisms when we did a review was that, man, I really wish the game had voice acting. I think it could add a lot to it. And so you get a little less attached to the characters because of that element, but I was still pretty attached to at least 3 out of 5 of them. 2 of them I didn't love the moveset necessarily, but that's a pretty good ratio considering those 2 characters. You probably have less to do with them as well in terms of just playtime. So I love it. Glad
I was able to bring some Weird West.
This might be another can of worms one. I think you're going to have more characters than I will here. And this is maybe even a bit of a weird one, but I want to bring up Elden Ring.
Oh boy.
I have a
long list.
Okay, let's get into it. My first character from Elden Ring, this one might be a bit weird, but it's Torrent the horse.
Oh, that's such a good one. I cannot believe
ghost horse. This is the best horse in any video game ever because you have movement abilities. It's so fast. I can't think of any game where I prefer to fight on a horse than I do on foot. And Elden Ring, I probably still do prefer on foot, but that horse combat is really fun. It works really well, especially when I realized that you can attack on both sides. I remember that was a thing where I was like only hitting right bumper and right trigger. And then you're like, no, you just hit the left bumper and you can attack on that side. I'm like, what? That just opens up my mind. So I love Torrent, and it was like actively disappointing at certain points when you are locked out of using him. I know it's like tight quarters.
He trivializes some fights, man. Like there's a few where I'm like, oh my god, the hit and run mechanic is too good.
They should have done it for the Elden Beast final boss. That would have made that fight a lot more interesting. Agreed. I think. But yeah, do love Torrent. Once again, there's no like character element to this one. It's strictly he is just a great companion, and also the fact that it's a ghost horse. There's no annoyingness of like, okay, I gotta call my horse, wait for him, hop on the horse, get off. Like it's super fast paced, and just adds to the game in the best way possible.
You just jump up in the air and a horse materializes under you.
So cool. I love it.
It's pretty cool. All right, let's get into some Elden Ring, man.
Let's go back and forth. Right. I only have one more, but what do you?
I've got some deep cut characters from this game that I was excited to revisit as I was putting this list together. So one that I wanted to mention that I don't think is probably going to be on many people will bring up, but I think this character has one of my favorite storylines out of the entire game, and it's Hyetta. She is the blind woman that you meet. So she is constantly, you see her a few different spots throughout the game, and she is constantly asking you to feed her grapes. And it is this like thing where you are like, God damn, I've not found any grapes. This is weird. But you do find a bunch of eyeballs. And it's one of those things where she is blind and you are feeding her these things. And every time you feed her one of these quote unquote grapes, she gets a form of vision, or like she's kind of like a priestess of sorts. So she is getting these like holy visions that are allowing her to move from place to place and actually like go quite far in this journey. And near the end, she realizes what you're giving her. She freaks out, but she realizes how important these things are, and the visions that she's getting are important. So she decides to continue to eat them, which is gross. And also like, I don't know, it's such a strange character moment. And then finally you meet her at the bottom of this dilapidated chapel, and it's the Frenzied Flame Chapel. And it's another place where there's fingers, which the 2 fingers are guiding you throughout most of the game, but this is where the frenzied 3 fingers is at the absolute bottom of it. It's one of the few fingers that is still alive, and she is essentially possessed by the frenzied flame and the 3 fingers, because you've constantly fed her these, and then eventually you start feeding her frenzied eyes as well, and she is also becoming frenzied. You have to eventually, like, she leads you to a point where you have to walk through a door. The frenzied fingers grab you and burn the frenzy into your body as well. And she is a martyr at that point too. She's like, that's her last step. Like, she was only there to lead you towards the frenzied flame. And after the frenzied flame is upon you, she sacrifices herself and she burns in the flame itself. And it's just this like really wild story arc in Elden Ring that I it was my second ending in that game, and I was so happy I made it all the way through that one, because she is a wild character in that game that ends up starting off pretty small in what you think you're just giving little side quest stuff, and she ends up having this huge storyline as you move your way through the story.
That's amazing.
Haya's pretty cool.
My next one was Ronnie, and honestly, she's cool, got a cool look, mysterious. Interesting. I like her kind of homies that her defenders, whatever they're called. Once again, don't know the names of anything.
Blythe. Blythe is actually on my list too. Cool. So
I honestly, beyond that, I don't know. Like, if asked me to make this list in April, I probably could have given you more compelling reasons. I wrote her on my list. Once again, I trust the March, April Dylan who wrote that there. She is cool. I don't know if I could fight for her beyond that, but maybe you have some more kind of actual character aspect to her story stuff that's interesting.
Yeah, Ronnie's the daughter of the other witch. I cannot remember that one's name.
The Moon Queen lady, right?
Yeah, the Moon Queen, and she is the the daughter of Radagon as well. So she is kind of going against her father a bit, which I think is, I don't know, compelling in its own right. But I think the really cool part about her is she has all of these underlings who are following her around and trust her immensely. But then she's also her relationship with Blythe. So I guess I'll lump Blythe in with her a little bit. I think is what makes her so interesting is man, I'm gonna butcher this because it has been so long as well. But Blythe is like attached to her. He's like possessed with the need to caretake for her. But if she goes down a certain route, he is made to stop her or to like go berserk, which he does near the end. I think it's pretty cool that she gives up her corporeal form about halfway through and becomes a puppet to make her way to her true body. So I guess it was a puppet originally as well. She's like, if you actually like see her hands and stuff like that, they're like mechanical, almost. But her soul is still there, and you actually kind of see her soul next to her body a few different times. She has this like weird ghost face thing that happens occasionally, and it's just because I don't think that body is her body's either, or her body either. And you go all the way deep into Ansel River, and you beat one of those big like space,
those Everstar, Evenstar demons or whatever they're called. Yeah.
And at the end, she's finally like becomes part of her body again. I think you give her the ring, you give her the wedding ring, you marry her, and she has a whole ending too. And I'm totally blanking on it because it was my first ending in the game actually. But she gives you the Moonlight Greatsword, which is like a FromSoft thing that has been going on since the PlayStation 1 era. I'm pretty sure. I think it was like in Kingsfield or something like that. And she's the way that you get the Moonlight Greatsword in that game. I wish I could.
You've done enough to explain why she's cool.
She is cool.
Who's the next character? Let's keep it
all right,
moving.
man. I just want to wax poetic about Elden Ring all day. I want to shout out. I already shouted out Blythe a little bit.
Yeah, I put him on the list here.
We can just toss him in with Ronnie a little bit, but Iron Fist Alexander. So this is your pot friend.
Yeah, that's a good one. I forgot about him, but I like this one. Yeah,
he is one of the more chipper people you meet throughout your journey. He is just so excited to go to battle and he wants to forge himself in the flames. Essentially, he
Mm-hmm.
wants to constantly toughen himself, and he is just this guy who meets you, and every time you see him, he's just like, "Hello, friend." Like, it is just this great guy to meet along this dreary journey.
He's like the only lighthearted thing in that game, pretty much.
Exactly. Exactly. So he's just a joy to see every time you see him. And then at the very end, you meet him in Farum Azula.
Yeah, you battle him, right?
And you battle him, and he just wants to feel the rush of battle. So he fights alongside you when you fight Radahn. And then eventually at the very end, he's like, all right, this is my time. I want to battle, because he sees you as the most formidable force.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's just, I don't know, he's just a great pure soul in a game
Best
that
pot of all time in video games.
Yeah, maybe get bent.
Take
Legend of Zelda pots. Yeah. So yeah, Iron Fist Alexander, just a really, really cool dude. Definitely would hang with him 10 out of 10.
Mm-hmm. Originally on my list, kind of jokingly, I put my player character because I think I got very attached to my player character of Viljewel. I'm not obviously going to put that on the list, but who's your next Elden Ring pick?
The last one I wanted to shout out, I think, is going to get knocked off the list immediately, but he was my favorite boss because of purely his voice acting, and it's Rykert, Lord of Blasphemy.
Yeah.
That's the Snake Man you fight at the bottom of was it Volcano Manor, right?
Yep.
Or Castle Morn is the one at the bottom of at the bottom of Volcano Manor, and he has the best voice acting in the entire game. That's the only reason he gets even on this list. He's one of the cooler.
Great cutscene, great opening cutscene.
Oh my god, it's so good when he's like, he pulls his head up and you see this big snake, and then you realize the snake's head flops back and it's actually his regular head there, and he just oh man, I gotta play Elden Ring again, because all the things that I want to like reenact from Elden Ring I can barely remember, and I know I'm gonna butcher it, so I will spare y'all. But Rykert's voice actor is hilariously good, and if you have not played Elden Ring, do not intend to play Elden Ring, at least watch his intro scene. It is a hoot.
While you're at it, go watch the Abyss Watchers scene. That's a great one too from
Dark Souls 3 has
unrelated. Go what's your next what's the next game you want to bring up?
I would love to shout out Neon White.
Okay.
I think Neon White has two characters that really, really spoke to me. I think the characters across the board, maybe three actually, but we'll keep it down to two just to have the fight be a little less tough. But obviously, I want to shout out White, who is your main character in Neon White. So he is originally, I guess, in a group of kind of like mobster types, bank robbers, sort of thing, and they all die, and those are kind of your ensemble cast throughout most of the game, outside of the angels or people who are running the game. But White is spectacularly voice acted, and I think that's one of the main reasons he ends up getting such a big boost for me. Not just because he has a bit of amnesia and everybody kind of knows something about him and kind of hates him a little bit, and you're trying to figure out why they have this relationship with him, and the way he has this kind of like roguish charm to him throughout, despite being in this like scenario where everyone knows him and he doesn't know anybody, and it's really awkward for him. But the voice actor is Steve Bloom, who is well known for being Spike Siegel in Cowboy Bebop. He's the main Cowboy Bebop voice actor for the dub, which is one of the few anime dubs of all time that is like, I would say just watch the dub. It's so incredible and worth watching. But his voice acting is just stellar in that game. Really does just kind of have a really great character arc. I'm not going to spoil it for you because I know you're hell bent on making your way through Neon White. It's a fantastic game that actually has some really great payoff. But White as a character, I think, has some really, really great moments, and he ends up becoming the hero at the end, which is he doesn't have that necessarily energy initially. I don't think he typically is the hero type, but he finds his way.
Interesting.
Which I think is pretty cool.
I think I'm a bit mixed on the like actual story of Neon White. Like gameplay wise, I'm eating it up, but I got to be honest, the last couple worlds I'm hitting F on those like cutscenes because I'm just kind of out of it. I think the dialogue is hit or miss, and I don't know, just the overarching story. Maybe it just moves too slowly or something like that. But I guess I think like that hook that you gave of like you're all this kind of mob bank robber. Like I feel like it takes so long before it actually gets to that, and at that point I was already kind of checked out a bit. So I do like the characters to an extent, but like I'm definitely disconnecting from their actual like full backstories and stuff like that at this point. But the other one we mentioned in the levels category was Violet. I really like Violet because she's just fucking crazy and it's just so much fun. Very over the top, as many other characters are. But yeah, I also really like her set of levels. Her side quests I think are interesting as well. So you could probably talk about more what's interesting about her backstory or something like that. But I just think on a superficial level, she's a fun character in the crew.
She's obsessed with white, and she's also obsessed with green in a certain way. And she really, for some reason, wants to kill white. Well, doesn't want white to know that she wants to kill him the entire time, which is pretty fun. So she's like setting up all types of traps and stuff for him. I do want to shout out one other neon white character though, and that is Mikey. Mikey is the kind of like angel Gabriel type in this game that he is, and he is a cat as well. I got a lot. You have multiple robots. I have multiple cats on mine for some reason.
Cat energy.
Yeah. So Mikey is this cigar smoking edgelord cat angel that I thought was just an absolute blast to communicate with when you got the opportunity to. He's the one that's kind of like the mayor of the space that you're in. But my favorite part about him is every single person who sees him differently. So white sees him as a cat, but then there's people who see him as like a seraphim. There's people who see him as like a beautiful woman. There's people who see him as like all these different types of thing, and it's just based on their own conscious that creates his form. So it's interesting. It's really funny that he has this like gravelly kind of like I don't know, just like I said, cigar smoking, whiskey drinking personality. Like definitely like a I don't know, Ron Perlman like or something like that. I don't know. He definitely has like this just like serious manly energy, and he's just like this adorable little cat. And then you realize, oh, White's the only person who sees him this way, and he is this all powerful being that is just kind of just a cool ass guy as well. So
love it.
Really loved Mikey also.
I love that. Let's with that, let's take our first break, and I think we're gonna throw to Kirklin after the break, who will tell you what his game of the year is. So let's throw to Kirklin. Okay, we are back. He hasn't recorded yet. I don't know what he picked yet, so we can't break it down like we did with Taylor in the first episode. But moving on to the next character, I'm gonna bring up Immortality here. Immortality is a game that I played through, rolled credits on, and I was kind of confused. I'm like, I'm done? I don't think I understood what's going on. I don't think I got the initial hook. And when I looked it up, because I did a couple things after I got the ending, quote unquote, and I was like, I don't really know what else I'm supposed to be doing here. It's very kind of nebulous game at times. And I looked it up and looked at, some ending explains and whatnot. I missed like so much of what the story is here. And I don't know if I truly ever would have got it, because it's one of those things where there's like one element to it that if you just don't see this one clip, you will never probably be able to understand that, which is weird. You'd hope maybe the context of the things around it, you'd be able to figure it out. I totally missed that angle of it. So there's this element to these characters that I can't connect with, but I still really liked Marissa Marcel as I'll say protagonist. You don't really play as a character, but she's who the story is what happened to her, right? And then John Durick is one of the directors that she works with, and they kind of have a relationship as well. So, I mean, just in terms of the actual performance of this, incredibly impressive, because it's an actress who, of course, is like doing 3 separate movies. So you're seeing her perform in 3 separate movies, but then you're seeing the in-between where she obviously is like a different type of character in like the behind-the-scenes things, and, before or after they say cut, whatnot, things like that. So it's just incredibly impressive, like the scope of what this character is. And I think even to do the performance plus the additional layer that I was alluding to, the thing that I kind of missed is like this whole other element to it as well. That's like Man, must be a very, very difficult acting job to do. What this actress had to do here, and John Durick, it's probably he's not really on screen acting at one point, so he's only ever playing one character in the game. But I still found him pretty compelling and very mysterious. So yeah, Immortality, very, very interesting game. That I wish I had found that one clip, and I wish I could have made those connections for myself. But it was still an interesting experience, and I'm still glad I played it for what it's worth.
I'm really excited to get into that one still. It's fairly recent, but
yes,
definitely high up there on games that I'm excited to get into. All right, I'm gonna do another one where I've got quite a few characters. I got quite a few characters from this one, and this one's gonna be, I guess, me talking for quite a bit because you only played about half of it so far. I would love to talk about Pentiment.
All right.
Once again, so Pentiment is kind of built upon its characters. So it is one of those things, like, if these characters weren't well written, I don't think this game would have been as good as it is, and it's phenomenal. Honestly, I really, really enjoyed this game more and more every night that I played it. But I want to shout out a few characters. The main one being your main character, which is Andreas.
I had him on my list too.
I'm going to get into spoiler territory a little bit, and I'm so sorry because I know you said you kind of have.
I told you I'm not playing anymore. I love Obsidian, but I'm done with this one. So
okay, fair. Okay, so Andreas has a crazy arc. So the way that this game works is it happens in multiple periods, almost like you're jumping forward like 20-30 years every single time that you play this game, or in every act. So first act, you're dealing with Andreas, who's like I said, your main character, and he is working in the monastery as an artist. He's doing art for like religious books and stuff like that. So he is a painter, and he's kind of just like moving throughout this world, and one of the people he sees as a mentor is falsely persecuted for a murder, and he puts it upon himself to handle finding who the real culprit is. And throughout, Andreas sticks his finger in a bunch of different stuff, starts pointing his finger at people that he has no idea what's really going on, and he does not understand the big picture, but he does realize that there are crimes happening throughout this town, and he's kind of like, all right, well, I got to pick the lesser of two evils constantly. And he can be kind of whatever character you want him to be. He does have his own personality, but his personality is decided on the characteristics of him that you've chosen. So you can be like a little bit of a womanizer. You can be somebody who's more worldly, and you can be someone who is really just like the stereotypical artist. Like you can really kind of make him identify. You can make him very religious, right? Like you can make him identify in whatever way that you would like. But
I love the way they do that too. Just a quick side note where you'll just be having a conversation, like you start and you're just playing the game, but then you'll be going through it and someone will ask you like, oh, where'd you study? And then you'll like fill in that part of your backstory, and then it will change, the dialogue options and things that you have from then on out. And they do that with, I think, like 3 or 4 different quote unquote stats. It's an interesting way for Obsidian, of course, who they're going to have some sort of skill tree or RPG elements in it. It's very adverse to what you would normally think of for those kinds I guess just general games, but for Pentiment, it works perfectly.
It wasn't like a character creator. Like these happen naturally as you play through the game. I think it was really, really smartly done as well. So yeah, Andreas is kind of moving through these different periods. So the first time that you're in town, you're an artist, and then you leave and you come back 20 years later, and then you have an apprentice who comes there with you, and you're showing him all of these people that you've met in the past. They're your old friends now. But obviously, depending on what choices you make, some of these people are a little pissed off at you because you sent one of them to the gallows because you blamed them for murder. And then another murder happens, so you kind of follow that cycle again. But the part that gets really truly engaging about Andreas, and this is the part that's a huge spoiler, so if you didn't get through Act 2 yet, then and you intend to, maybe tune in a little bit, but I'm going to spoil it for Dylan, that's for sure. So Andreas at the end of Act 2 runs back into the library as it is caught on fire to save as much knowledge as he can, and he dies. And then you go into Act 3 as a completely different character. which
Is it
is
the apprentice or someone
no,
new?
it is Klaus's daughter. It is the person who's doing the typefacing, the printing in the town.
Mm.
His youngest daughter, who's like a baby or like a very little girl. You
Oh,
tell her
okay.
a story in the beginning of the first act,
That's cool. I
becomes
like
your
that.
main character. And throughout that process, she ends up having this person who's constantly following her. He's like a ghost. And he's in a person who's in the Abbey. They're drawing all over the Abbey, and you realize Andreas didn't necessarily die. And you meet him near the end, and you realize he's been living in the Abbey for 30 years alone.
Crazy.
And he is grizzled and messed up looking, and he is still trying to figure out what is actually going on in this town that has this deep dark secret. And ultimately you do, and it is this huge twist, and I never ultimately would have expected. I called it like right at the last like 5 minutes before you figure out who it is.
Yeah.
It was like it was seconds before you actually find out. And it's just, I don't know, he just has this arc. He has like such a larger than life character arc for a game that is not super long, but it almost reminds me of like like other Obsidian games, or maybe even like some BioWare games, where these characters have like just these huge stories, and they were able to give this man so much in such a short amount of time that really made him one of my favorites, I think, this year. He has got some twists and turns around him as well, which I think is pretty cool.
Awesome.
To watch his whole life is really interesting.
So is that character you play as in the third act going to be on this contenders list as well for you?
Sure is. So
what's
that's
their name?
Magdalene, or Mags, and she is a really interesting character, because for the first two acts you don't pay a lot of attention to her. You're like, oh, this is this little girl, this young girl in town, and then she ends up having the same setup as Andreas does, where they ask about her interests. The books that you give her when she's a young girl, when you return, affect her interests later on, and like
That's
she
cool.
You were essentially, without knowing it, building her character as Andreas as well. And then she makes her own decisions throughout also. But her main problem is the fact that her father is now dying. She has a whole different list of issues she's dealing with. Like, her father's close to death. She has to decide whether or not she's leaving for a larger town, becoming a priestess, deciding if she's going to be the printer in the town. Like, she has like real life problems, where I feel like Andreas was a bit of an aloof guy who was kind of moving through life and making his problems, or making everyone else's problems, his problems, where Magdalene's problems are her problems. And it's really interesting to see how the town's troubles interact with her as a person, more than a guy who's coming and visiting off and on. And then yeah, she just has like a really, I think, cool way of making you look at the town differently. Whereas Andreas is like I said, kind of a visitor, and Magdalene is this is her home, and how she interacts with all of these people is a little differently, because they're like her childhood crush and the town drunk that she's had run-ins with, and like all of these, just it makes you just look at the characters completely different. It's really cool that they gave you a different magnifying glass to look at all these people with at kind of the last minute. You get to know them through Andreas, and then out of nowhere you're like, oh my god, I never thought about them this way. Which is, I think, is really, really great. And then the other two characters are kind of side characters. Otto, who is kind of the town handyman, and he ends up kind of getting himself in a lot of trouble throughout, where he is upset with how the monastery is dealing with the troubles of the peasants and the townspeople, and he ends up inciting a riot, which is pretty crazy, and that's what leads to the town burning down, or not the town burning down, the monastery burning down. So he kind of pushes for a really huge moment in the game, even though that wasn't his initial decision. He just wanted things to get fixed, and people in the town took that and became a little more passionate, I guess, than he was hoping they would, and they actually are the ones that burn it down, and he was just like, no, I just want to change. So he's actually like a really positive character, that his decisions led towards some really difficult moments, even though he had good intentions. And then I thought Guy was a really compelling character because I absolutely hated him. It's great to have a kind of like antagonist throughout. He's one of the people who works in the the scriptorium, which is where Andreas is working as well. And he is just kind of a piece of shit. He's really annoying. He is a huge kiss ass, and you realize throughout the game that he's kind of cooking some books along the way too, and he's stealing from the townspeople. He becomes like even more evil as you play through, and Guy ends up being just one of those people who I loved to hate, and I felt really vindicated in hating him more and more as I went through the game. And that's always nice to not feel like, man, I really hated this guy, and in fact, he was good all along. No, this guy just truly sucks, and he was fun to hate on throughout the entire game.
Sometimes those people exist, so that makes sense. Love it. Okay,
all right. That's my Pentiment hour.
Pentiment hour is over. It is Triangle Strategy hour now. I'm going to show a few characters from Triangle Strategy. I love the story of this game and a lot of characters along the way. I'll shout out the protagonist of Sarah Noah, which is a character that I think could be seen as maybe a bit boring in some sense, but I think as you play through the game more and more and you kind of define the character that he is, obviously you're obviously making a lot of decisions with him, and even just how you address people, the kind of people that you're siding with, and that's going to affect the kind of person he's going to be. So a lot of it is kind of up to the player, but I really liked Sarah Noah. I think he has so much weight on his shoulders, and there's a lot of emotional stuff that happens to him, his family, and his friends, and like all of that is felt very much by him. And the performances across the board, Triangle Strategy, I think are really good. Once again, we talked about this in our review, but I played through it in the Japanese voice acting, which I think was probably the way to go because I heard a lot of criticism for the English voice acting in the game. But then, Sarah Noah too, just obviously being your protagonist, usually you, on any main quest, you have to bring him with you, whereas the other people you can kind of switch out depending on the mission. But he is such a crucial part of any strategy in that game. He's just such a good all-arounder kind of character as well. So, big fan of Sarah Noah. Here's a weird one. The character's name is Decimal. I'm pretty sure he's a robot, though it's unclear if it's like magic or whatnot. But Decimal is essentially a like wine barrel that has arms and legs that you can unlock. I think you can only get Decimal in the post game, like in New Game Plus. You have to keep going, I think, to get Decimal. And it just has one of the most interesting, like there's not really much character wise. It's just kind of a funny hook for the character. But in terms of like the strategy element of it, Decimal is a character that has like 3 or 4 abilities that are all based on like multiplication, or division, whatever you want to call it, where it's like in an AoE, Decimal will deal damage to anyone who has a HP in divisible of 4, or a divisible of 5, divisible of 6. It'll apply different abilities, which is just so funny because I feel like strategy games often like try not to make you worry too much about the numbers of things.
Random.
But then this is like math. This is like Math City on Decimal. So I thought this is like a super just unique type of character among many other class types in Triangle Strategy that I've never seen in the genre, but Decimal was super weird in that way. Maybe my favorite character is kind of an underdog. His name is Narv. He's like a young kid magician who his grandfather was a great magician, so he's always trying to aspire to be just like his grandfather. And I think Narv for me is just like such a happy-go-lucky kind of character, and on the strategy side of things as well, kind of embodies that childhood potential element of most other mage characters in the game. Are like, this is the ice character, this is the healer character, this is the character that has all the fire moves. But Narv, since he's a kid, he's kind of dabbling in all of them. So you have like one healing move, you have one electricity move, one fire move, one ice move. He gets a little bit of everything, so he ends up being just super strong as well, because then you have a lot of variety in terms of hitting different enemies that have weaknesses or strengths against certain things. So he ended up being kind of like an anchor of my team, even though he starts out kind of understated and underestimated. Next one is going to be Archibald. Archibald is just like this old man who has essentially retired, but then things are so dire that he's like, okay, I'll pick up the bow one more time. And it's cool because there's like particularly like one battlefield you go to, and he's like, I fought here like 40 years ago. Like, check out this strategy that we used to like win this fight. You get like this backstory cutscene of like him doing this battle back in the day. He's just a really cool character that's once again based around. He gets like I think it's more damage the further away he is, and he has massive range. So you're always trying to get like the maximum, like whatever it is, 8 tiles away. But then since there's like height advantage all over the place, and hills and whatnot, it's kind of hard to do that and still be an effective archer at times. So I felt like he was a pretty interesting character to play with. And then the last one I'll shout out here is Anna, who is one of your starting characters in the game. This is like the stealth character, just super fun to play as just like invisibility. She can jump up and down terrain, has double attacks and like just really high speed stat and stuff like that. But I also think on the story side of things, pretty like subtle character for the most part. But I felt like she was just very reliable, someone you could always just in those decision making sequences when you're trying to persuade your team to go one way or another. She pretty much just like almost always, with a couple exceptions, just has so much trust and faith in you that it's a pretty easy conversation of like swaying her either way. So it's kind of nice to have someone on the team who is kind of on your side at all given times. So I love almost all the characters in this game. Just really, really fun characters and good story and all that stuff. So I'm just gonna write all those on the list. We'll come back, of course, because right now we have many entries for most of these games that we've shouted out here so far. But there you go.
Loving the thought of this this boozed up barrel man.
Yeah, Decimal. Oh, he's so funny.
Decimal sounds sick.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to quickly shout out. This is a character that I don't think had a unless you dug really deep. And to that point, I don't think I dug as deep as I could have. But I felt like the story behind them, while exists, I think their just character design and the amount of art styles they show you of this character is absolutely excellent and one of the best parts of this game. And I wanted to shout out the Fox from Tunic.
Okay. Yeah. I like
that. So the reason that I ended up loving this character, so he is very much a Link-like, but it's just adorable little fox. But the fact that in every single image of him in that game is this different version of him, and some are absolutely stunning pieces of visual, like pieces of art that you see in the character manual, where there are these hand drawn like pictures of him in these larger than life spaces that you start to realize like are actually in the game as well, but they're not shown in this same light. Like occasionally you'll see him, like it'll be a picture of him and the camera angle will be pointed up like just below him, and it'll be this huge cavern that he's about to walk into, and it's just this it puts him in these beautiful larger than life spaces that I just found him so I don't know, such an engaging character to play as, despite the fact that he is kind of this no speech kind of it reminded me very much of, I think I mentioned this previously when we were talking about best visuals, but the way that I felt you feel about Mario or somebody like that, who is just like, okay, maybe he doesn't have a lot to say, but from a visual perspective, and then also from a just I am excited to play this video game character, I was like, they can use Tunic for the next 20 years and I'll be happy. Like, or the Fox from Tunic for the next 20 years and I'll be happy. But I believe there is like a deeper story between him and the like ethereal fox woman who's locked in the cage, and like definitely. They're eventually supposed to like replace each other, or the fox that you're building out the book is going to give the knowledge to that fox to make sure that they don't have they don't restart the cycle again and one person's imprisoned while another fox is on the way to save them. Like there's a cyclical nature to that world that your main character has the potential to stop that cycle. I thought that was really interesting too, but it does require a lot of digging in much deeper than the game actually requires you to.
Yeah, and the the true ending of the game is also behind the Golden Path, which is one of the it's a very, very difficult puzzle. It's also one of the best puzzles ever in a game, but it's very, very difficult to do it unless you use a guide, of course. But I think that also lends to that. It just changes how that relationship works. I don't feel the need to spoil that. If we really want to get into it, we can. But I'm glad you shouted that one out. And also just super cute.
He's super cute.
That's worth a lot.
I was just like, damn, I like this little guy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see. Who do I want to do? A couple characters from Alive. I'm gonna bring up Pogo. Pogo is who you play as if you go in the prehistoric time, where there's kind of dinosaurs and you're kind of a caveman society. And this whole story of this one is just told through grunts, I should say, grunts and emojis, because there's language has not been developed yet. So it's just character, and somehow it's still able to, exactly what's going on at all times, because of there's a lot of physical comedy in this bit as well, which is really fun. But I really liked Pogo as being the main character here. Obviously, as I just said, there's not these in-depth conversations and dialogue and plot twists. It's a pretty straightforward, simple story. But I really liked playing as Pogo. You also have an ape companion. I forget what that character's name is too, but they were a fun duo in combat as well.
Nice.
And then Akira is who you play in I think it's near future or distant future. One of those two. Akira. I really liked this guy as well. This ended up being my favorite of the time eras in that game. So I think I just naturally got attached to him more. But it's a much more grounded story in a lot of ways, and you have a lot of relationships in that classic JRPG way of not really a mother, but you hang out a lot at this orphanage, and that's kind of your mother character, and you have your kind of siblings that the other kids that live there and stuff like that. So there's a lot more kind of stakes, I felt like, in this story. So, and then once again on the moveset side of things, really interesting the dynamic you have, and your once again robot kind of companion there. And then you also get some other dude who just some macho guy who just punches dudes who joins your team. So the combat of that sequence as well was really fun.
Hell yeah. All of those reminded me of different Final Fantasy archetypes throughout the years. I was like,
it's definitely, it's definitely playing on a lot of tropes, but I feel like they do, I don't know, it's the variety that makes the game so exciting. Plus there's a cool ending sequence to it as well. I'll say that, but
very excited to jump into that one. You may be able to rattle off a few, because I feel like the one that I have left, I have a lot of characters for. I think it's pretty obvious which one that is. So I'll let you kind of
let's
run
end
for
on
a little bit, and then we can end on
that one. So I have 3 more games here. I had a couple characters from Serial Cleaners. I feel like Serial Cleaners has got its due so far in our best ofs. So I'm actually okay, because I think I like some of these characters, but there's also some parts of the writing where it's kind of cringy, and I think it's intentional. So it works in the way that Violet in Neon White's kind of cringy at times, but it's fun. So I like the characters in that game. I'll just say that. You won't see me shouting out Aloy in returning characters. Unfortunately, I did not like at all what they did with the arc of that character, but Zoe is a new character in Horizon Forbidden West, and I actually really liked her. There's some new characters that I enjoyed. For the most part, I think they missed the mark. I just think the writing and the story in that game is really weak. But Zoe was the one character that is a good addition, and I don't think I'd be too excited to play the third entry, which is no doubt coming, because there's a big cliffhanger at the end of that game.
But a big DLC as well. So
there's
there was a part of me was I don't know if this is a sequel or not. Or
that's definitely a DLC in the way that they did the Frozen Wilds for the first game. But the third game is going to it's coming. They teased it majorly. It's major cliffhanger ending. Another criticism I have for that game is it doesn't have an ending, because there's a huge cliffhanger. But anyway, Zoe is a cool character. It's tricky because, once again, February, so I couldn't give you here was some emotional scene or something like that. So this might be she might get booted off the list pretty soon here, but I'll quickly mention her there. And then my last game pre the big one is A Plague Tale Requiem, which a game that, once again, a little bit weaker than the first entry for me, but still some really good characters and writing. I think I'll be talking more passionately about some of those in the returning character sequence. But 2 characters that are new, Sophia and Arnaud, I really liked both of them. Particularly Sophia is this character who starts out kind of rough around the edges and quite hostile, but then turns and ends up being quite a friendly companion that is with you for most of the game. I also really like that there's a big element of this sequel where your character has to kill people, and the most games don't just ignore that. They're just like the suspension of disbelief in a way. Like they just don't ever comment on the fact that your character has to kill other people to progress in the world. Plague Tale does play on that a lot. I think they miss the mark in some ways, but I think it's actually very successfully done from Sophia's perspective and the way she reacts in those moments. And the more you kill people, the more she is wrestling with that and if she should be helping you, because there obviously is the pros and cons of helping out your characters, Amicia and Hugo, go through it. Is like, oh, is it worth the cost that I'm seeing like this person transform in front of me into this fucking monster who's just wrecking people and throwing like slinging rocks at their head left, right, and center? So I like that element. And mm-hmm. And Arnaud is another companion that joins you pretty early on. Particularly, I like his relationship with Hugo, where he's able to be a bit of like a father figure at times. Unfortunately, he's a character that kind of disappears for several hours, and so you just, I mean, I think actually in the game, this might be a bit of a spoiler. I think they are trying to make it seem like he died, but it's like, okay, you're obviously going to see him again, but then I think they should have maybe had a scene or two where you're like seeing his perspective of what he was doing during that time or something like that. So maybe a bit weaker at times, but Sophia to me is another great Plague Tale character, and they have a few of those across the two games already. So nice. Yeah, with those two, why don't you bring us home with God of War and shout out your, of course, his debut characters. So we have some returnees as well later on, but just debut characters.
Yeah, this is people who we are seeing for the first time in God of War, or seeing their face for the first time, because some of these we definitely hear about them, but we get to see them in their full there So I want to start off a little light here, and I want to shout out Fenrir. There are a few moments in games that tear me up, like this fucking dog did. Or this wolf did. So you start off the game, and it is one of the, like, I guess Atreus has dealt with loss numerous times in our time with him. And this one is one of the first times where you see him really kind of crack a little bit. Like, obviously his mom dying was like really hard for him, but and is most of that game is about that struggle. But just seeing kind of the defeat in his eyes when Fenrir died was pretty hard for me, and just it reminded me of, like, I don't know, I have had many animals. I've had animals throughout my life. Like, it's a tough moment losing an animal, and I think they really they communicated that well in that moment. But there is so much more to that moment as well, which ends up leading me to really enjoy Fenrir as kind of this like strange character that shows back up later on in the game. So when he does die, you realize that maybe there's a little magic that Atreus can do that he doesn't realize he can do, and his soul gets implanted in the blade, and you end up dealing with a fight with, is it Garm? Is that the name of the hell dog? So there's a soulless dog in hell in this game, and he they kill him numerous times, and he keeps just coming back to life, and they decide, okay, well, this is one of the great moments where Kratos truly trusts Atreus and allows him to do what he thinks is right, and he implants the soul of Fenrir in this gigantic ass dog, and it is one of the coolest things ever, I think. Like, it's just this giant dog who ends up turning into, like, who's this violent, scary beast, just melts and turns into this incredible puppy who is I don't know, when Kratos literally just hits him with a sit, and this big dog just goes doom and like lands on his ass, and just like you realize like he truly is like that he got his dog back, which is like, I don't know, that's every person's dream, is to, like, I don't know, you have this tiny ass dog, which is, it wasn't tiny for him, it was a wolf, but you have this dog who you truly love, and then it becomes Clifford, the big, like, the giant hell dog. An incredible moment. And then the fact that he is incredibly fond of another new character that I want to shout out later, and the fact that he can tear rips through space-time is pretty damn cool. I don't know, just really good animal
cool.
character. I really dug
Mm-hmm.
the cute dog in this game.
Well, that character you alluded to, Angrboda, this is going to be my next one. I think she's my favorite new character in this sequel here. Maybe the lead villain might be in contention, but
Yeah.
I really like Angrboda. I think she has
Me too.
a pretty tragic story in a way. They don't
Mhm.
really sit and let you linger on it because it's not really her story. It's more of a side thing. But I still think it was really impactful for me. I don't know. I like her sequences in the game. She's a character I wanted to even see more of than what we got necessarily. But yeah, I think she's once again the performance for God of War. Just performance, great. We can just say that mocap, like animation, all that stuff's great. We can just say that across the board, so we don't have to repeat ourselves on that. But yeah, I really liked Angrboda. I think she added a lot to this game, and also, you need some if you're gonna go off on your own, quote unquote, and play with Atreus and his own sequences. I think she works as a good way to bring out like different questions from him that you would not normally get from Kratos. So
yeah, she's just here to do giant stuff, man. It is.
Mm-hmm.
She is an exceptional character. Also,
amazing name too. Great name.
Angrboda is a really cool one. I stumbled over it a few times, but it definitely warmed up to it. Also, her relationship with her grandmother is tragic.
Yeah, cool.
Really, really sad. Yeah, Angrboda, one of the better new characters of the year by far. Another one I really loved off of God of War is this rendition of Thor.
Yeah, for sure.
I really thought they knocked it out of the park with him. He is just this war. He is such a good mirror for who Kratos has been. This person who has clearly done terrible things, is unable to deal with the PTSD that he's experiencing from these terrible things that he has done, and then realizing how it's affecting his family, realizing how his father is constantly affecting him, and he's just this kind of like angry, brash, broken man. In like the fact that the way that he handles a lot of his problems is just by fighting or drinking, right? Yeah. Like he is this really hurt person that you first think he's just kind of this gruff asshole, and you realize he has layers to him, and he kind of is more sad than anything. And his whole arc, I know we spoiled this a lot in the spoiler cast, but the relationship he has is with his dad and his daughter specifically end up having huge moments. Some of my favorite moments in the entire game are centered around Thor, surprisingly, and his relationship with his family. Because once again, they are like such great opportunities to show you how far Kratos has come within his family and the people that he considers his new family. Like you realize that Kratos isn't as much of a piece of shit as he was previously, because you can kind of look at Thor and be like, well, that's who Kratos was. And he has started to try to be better, and him communicating that message to Thor is such a powerful moment.
Odin. I think Odin is a very compelling villain for me, mostly because you hear the whole game why everyone hates him or has this terrible past with him, or he's done some horrible thing to him. But when you interact with him through Atreus, he is just such a charmer, and he just seems so kind, and he's so selfless. And even when you fuck up, he's like, it's okay, like we'll get through this. The fact that they were able to, make me fall for his charm is really well done. He's very menacing. I know I mentioned this already, but like once again, the performance is so good. And yeah, I think once again, there's a huge story twist that happens with him too, which just kind of reframes everything you've had up to this point, which is just fantastic. I don't know if I can name too many just iconic villains from games for me that are like written as well as Odin is here. And yeah, I mean, for all the struggles I had with the game, it's like I do want to replay it just to think about those scenes again, knowing like what the plot twists are later on. So shouts to Odin.
Odin is one of the great villains in video game history, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Excellent, and his voice acting is God, it's
it's really
good. It's so good. We're we're gonna fight over him here later, I think.
Sure. Do you have any more God of
Maybe.
War debut characters?
None that I definitely have quite a few returning, but
Yes.
yeah, no.
Okay, so is that our list then of nominees?
I believe so.
Okay. I'm gonna bring this up on screen, and I'm gonna read this off very fast, and then we're gonna bring this down to 5. So now I'm really glad that we have 2 separate 5 lists, because it would be hard to add in all those recurring characters, returning characters.
Against these, man, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we got Burgle from Grounded, Grady from Aperture Desk Job, Mio from Xenoblade Chronicles 3. From Stray, we have both the Cat and B12. We have Elstar from Signalis, Hunter from Midnight Suns, Clarence Quig, I don't even know if that's how it's actually pronounced, from Weird West. From Elden Ring, we have Torrent, Hyeda, Ronnie, Blythe, Iron Fist, Alexander, and Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy. You can tell me if I spell any names wrong, by the way.
You got these.
From Neon White, we have White, Violet, and Mikey. From Immortality, we have Marissa Marcel and John Durick. From Pentiment, we have Andreas, Mags, Otto, Guy. From Triangle Strategy, we have Anna, Archibald, Narv, Sarah Noah, and Decimal. We got the Fox from Tunic. From Live Live, we got Pogo and Akira. From Horizon, we have Zoe. And then from Plague Tale, we got Sophia and Arnaud. And then God of War, we got Fenrir and Rabota, Thor, and Odin. We got to narrow this down to 5. Awesome. It's a huge list. For some reason, I feel like it might be easier to get to 5, but we'll see how that goes. Do we want to make some cuts for? Do you have any locks? I guess maybe we can go to God of War and look at our lock or two.
Oh, it's Odin.
I don't know if that's a good way. Should we lock Odin right away?
Firm lock, like immediately. Like I literally just said, he's one of the best video game villains ever.
Yeah. There's a case for Thor and Angry Boat. Maybe we come back to God of War. We got one we got one lock. Yeah. Let's cruise around. I'm gonna just make a few quick cuts just so we can make this easier. From Plague Tale, Sophia is like miles better than Arnaud, so I'll keep that one. Sorry, Zoe, I'm gonna drop you out of Horizon.
The Fox from Tunic can go.
Fox
not
from
a
Tunic.
Big character, despite being super cool.
I think from Triangle Strategy, I might be. This is actually tricky. Elvin. I'm gonna kick 3 characters off the list. I'm gonna kick off Decimal, Archibald, and Anna for now. We can come back to that.
Guy and Otto from Pentiment. We already have 4 people from Pentiment. Andreas and Mags are both excellent. But
sounds good. We'll get rid of John Durick from Immortality. What about Neon White for you? Where are you at with that one?
Violet can go.
Okay.
Between the 2 of those.
I feel like only one's going to make it, if any. So which one would you pick? I definitely lean on you for this because, like I said, I'm skipping cutscenes.
Such a cool character, but I think the performance from White is probably the winner there.
Let's do that. Elden Ring. This is actually tricky. Is Ronnie just like the number 1, or is this up for debate? I don't actually really know. You're deeper in the lore than I am, of course.
Rykard can go. Blythe can go. He's like supporting Ronnie's story. Yeah. Hyeda and Ronnie are both really good.
Okay. I did like your description of Hyeda. I mean, I totally missed that.
Storyline is awesome. Okay. How do you feel about Torrent? He's best horse, man.
He's best horse.
It's mostly mechanical though.
And 100%
Ronnie gives you Torrent, so that's a point towards Ronnie.
We'll do that. That's fine for now. Can we get rid of Burgle?
Yeah, I know. I knew that one was going to be an easy. I thought that he did give me a few good chuckles, man.
And I think we can get rid of the other robot, B12, from Stray. Keeping the cat for now. So that was pretty good. We just cut the list in half, just like that.
Boom.
Where do we go next? I think for me, I would like to. When I look at this list as a whole, there's one lock I'd like to see immediately, and this is one you haven't played. But Marissa Marcel, I think, is just deserving of that lock kind of tier.
I get it. If it's anything like her story, like the performances in these can be phenomenal, and the amount of acting required. Like
she's playing like at least 5 different characters in this, which is insane. So
done.
Like,
done.
Let's put her on the
I
list.
I know what that pedigree is for that team, and I have to imagine that this is a hell of a performance.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, we're doing good right now. Making good
Yeah.
progress here.
So this makes it tough because we have a crazy long list, and we only have 3 slots though.
I really like Grady. That might be a personal top 5 for me. If I don't know, I'd have to think. I'd have to think about that. I really have to think about that.
So
but I think
here's
it just
my
because of
problem
the
with-
quantity, I might just cut him because of that.
Desk Job is a weird one because for some reason I barely remember it, even though I played through it.
Let's get rid of Grady. Let's get rid of Grady then.
Kind of not doing Grady. I'm doing him a bit of a disservice, I think. I'd say the cat from Stray. It's a cool. It's a really good cat.
It's a great cat.
But it's a cat. It's just a normal cat. It doesn't even talk. As far as cats go, I've had cats that have spoken. I've had cats that have used vacuum cleaners. I've had cats that have been full people. There's another cat person on this list already.
Yeah.
I might be
I
not.
think I'd probably be okay with it. But by your own logic, I'm gonna cut Fenrir then without
okay. All right. Valid.
Everything you just said can pretty much apply. Though I think there actually is more story going on with Fenrir, but we gotta cut this out.
Fenrir.
I think I will get rid of all my triangle strategy picks, just because they're kind of me personal ones, and I think for me it's more about the ensemble than any individual character in that game. So I'll drop those.
Yeah,
we're getting down to it. We're doing good here.
Totally.
So I guess I actually want to bring this one up because we've talked about this a little bit off cast. Is that you're maybe not loving the characters in Midnight Suns, whereas I am the complete opposite. And I very much am, and I love Hunter. I think it's a really, really well done character. I mentioned all those things. We're also playing with a different voice actor, so that kind of changes things a bit. So that that would be maybe a top 5 for me, but I'm curious what you think about that.
It's not a top 5 for me. I'm enjoying Midnight Suns a lot, and I was saying kind of like off stream a little bit that I feel like I'm not fully engaged out of this guy being just like, I hate my mom, and everybody needs to help me fight my mom.
Okay.
But the voice acting's good.
Okay.
And
I think more Midnight Suns things will come up in appearance. So let's drop Hunter. So I'm gonna point at these two at the top, Mio and L-Star, just because I mean I've played half of Signalis, I guess, but it wouldn't. I don't have enough experience. Okay, we had some internet issues, but I think we are back. Hopefully, we were talking about Mio and L-Star. You were about to mention if these are kind of top 5 contenders for you. So what do you think?
You put them in the ring together. I see. So I'd say as far as like fully fledged characters, Mio is better rounded. Like honestly, one of the better characters on the entire list for me, like a top 5 contender easily. Where honestly, most of the characters from Xenoblade Chronicles 3 are really, really strong contenders, but she is far and away one of the more difficult tasks in a video game I've experienced, where everybody else has got like years to live, and she's just like,
right.
I might die tomorrow. It feels like every moment you're in a conversation with her, and the fact that she's one of your main characters and she's still fighting to save the world essentially is really heroic in its own sense. Like she is a truly incredible character.
I believe you. I'm with you. It sounds like she's a contender. Is L-Star in there too?
L-Star, I say Signalis has like the Dark Souls problem where like a lot of the story is hidden from you. And as you learn more about L-Star, she becomes much more interesting. But at face value, she's just kind of like your main character you're playing through the game with. You know what I mean? You start to read a few more like logs, you read some diaries, you start like realizing like, man, there's more to this character than I truly expected, and some really crazy sci-fi stuff is happening with her. but I think it's more the overarching story that is interesting, that is surrounding her and how she fits into that, than it is her as a character. So Mio takes the pick for me out of that bunch, and I know we have a crazy list of people that are going to rise to the top here. I'd love to see Mio make top 5. I think I would be comfortable with L-Star.
Okay.
Not even top 10 though. I feel like we had to talk about some other people before her. But
I mean,
it's okay. It's okay. She's not going to make it. She's not going to make it.
She's not going to make top 5.
It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. But
it's not. Yeah. Weird West. I am okay to drop this one out too at this point. Assuming you are as well.
Yeah. Cool character though. Really cool one.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard for me because I like all the characters in their different ways, and it really is like supposed to be a collective thing for how the story kind of closes off and whatnot. So, but anyway, made it far on the list here.
Oh yeah.
I think I can see both the live picks going. Once again, like if we're talking about an ensemble cast, a whole roster, and we're talking about all of the live characters, that's a different conversation. But I think individually, these two can't quite stack up with the rest of the pedigree we got here.
I have 2 I can let go right now that are going to be tough for me, but I'm once again looking at this list. Mags from Pentiment, because Andreas is just by and large has a more as a character, because Mags only has really one arc that you're dealing with her, and Andreas is in all 3. And then White from Neon White. I'd say a really fun performance from that voice actor, but ultimately
Matt Mercer.
Troy Mercer. Ultimately, he was leading more on nostalgia for me than anything, I'd say.
Okay, when it comes to Elden Ring, like I don't need to see any of these on the list, but obviously I'm missing a lot of the context here. I'm more of like a superficially looking at these characters. I don't dig into the lore as much. So is this is Elden Ring possibly more than one contender? If not, who would be the one champion you want for Elden Ring?
It's weird that I feel like it's Hayata out of the bunch, but
that is surprising. But I based on your description, I like that.
You can miss it entirely. That's the thing. There's not a lot going on there with any particular character unless you dig super deep into what they have to offer. Like you can follow full quest lines to the end in that game, or you can literally like meet them and move on with your life, or you can never meet them. You know what I mean? So it's pretty tough with Elden Ring, especially because of the way that storytelling is so piecemeal and leaves more to you reading item descriptions and stuff like that to get the full effect. But Hayata gives you most of the information about the Frenzied Flame as a entity in that game, which I think is super cool. Whereas Ronnie gives you a bunch of information about what the that like Eldritch beast is at the end. I can't remember the name of it. But for the reason that I remember Hayata's vividly and don't remember as much as of Ronnie's, even though I think Ronnie might have the better story ultimately, I don't know. This is one of those recency bias things. I feel like Hayata was in my second playthrough, so I remember more about her storyline. And then Iron Fist Alexander, just the coolest dude. We'll hang with him all the time. But
him and Decimal are like in the same tier together. You know, they're just hanging out, doing their cool like weirdo thing.
Be in a pot
in a barrel, just hanging out. I think like Andreas, that sounds like a lock.
Oh my god!
Based on conversations, and I also like him too. I of course don't have all that texture to it, but I like even just from part 1, like I still really like the character. He's so
such an excellent
should we lock him?
Yeah, like just I know we'll probably talk about it more, but like shout out to Pentiment, like biggest surprise of the year for me. Surprise of the playthrough. I was like halfway into that game, still not sure about it, and by the time I got to the end of it, I was like, I fucking love this game.
Yeah.
Could not believe I fell in love with it as much as I did.
I will make things easier here, and I will drop Sophia because I'm gonna drop Sophia and put all of that support and energy I have into characters that are gonna pop up and returning for Plague Tale, and I'll fight stronger there. But I'm okay to let her fall here. She did pretty good, just making outside the list. So we just got to cut this list in half. We have Mio from Xenoblade Chronicles.
Hayeda's got to go.
Hayeda from Ring, and then 2 God of War characters, Angrboda and Thor. Yeah, that's where you're at, Hayeda.
Well, out of these 3, and I can only pick 2 of them, like Mio, Angrboda, and Thor are all much better characters than Hayeda is by a mile.
Should we put Mio in for, to get another game in there and then pick God of War for the final slot?
I think that's fair. I think Xenoblade Chronicles 3 did not get as much of a representation as it could have here because I was just so confident in Mio. I could have listed every single character in that game.
Yeah, for sure. I am on the side of Angrboda, but I'm happy with Thor too, to be honest. So I think I'm gonna put all the pressure on your shoulders and ask you who you want to pick as our final best debut character of the year.
These are 2 in what if I did something crazy?
What is that?
Get rid of Mio and put them both in there.
Ooh.
I love Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and I love you, Mio.
You won't find me complaining with that, Dante. I'm happy with that.
Angrboda and Thor have so much depth to them, and they're oh my god, they're represented. So that's 3 Ragnarok characters in our top 5.
Hey, that's a great story. The best story of the year. I'll say it. I'll say it. Let's go with it. Let's go with it. Do you have reservations? You feel like there's something do you feel like that's okay?
Yeah, like I love Xenoblade a lot and I love all those characters, but like man, Ragnarok is on a completely different plane of existence sometimes.
I think the only other way then would be to drop Andreas. Where are you between Andreas and Leo?
No way.
Andreas. Okay, then I think this is a good list. So from God of War, we have Angrboda, Thor, and Odin. And then from Immortality, got Marissa Marcel and Andreas from Pentiment. I think that's not as much variety as our previous lists, but it's still very solid.
It is so well deserved. Like God of War Ragnarok is like one of my favorite movies of this year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's kind of the category it falls into. Apparently Immortality as well, but
that's 3 movies and then like a meta movie on top of it. I love it. Let's take our last break of the show and we'll come back and we'll finish off our last list of 2022 with the best returning characters. Okay, we have returned. I think this will be a much quicker list, but I always think that, and then we end up going for hours-long journey because this is the final celebration for 2022 games. We got to go hard on it. That's why we're doing this, for the love of all these games that we played. I'm going to kick it off here. So appearance for me, of course, writing and like character arcs and stuff, like those things tend to have precedence when we're thinking of great characters and stories and stuff like that. But appearance for me was kind of, the reason I wanted to do this is to represent just characters that we've seen before, but I just really like their rendition. So I'm going to start it off by bringing in Donkey Kong from Mario Strikers Battle League, a game we have not talked about at all yet.
No way.
Me and the rest of the GeekVerse squad are big Mario Strikers fans, and it's too bad because I think Battle League has the best mechanics of the now trilogy, but there's just not a ton of like interesting single player content in there. Just maybe not a ton of variety or any bonus modes. So it's a game that, not going to crack into my top 10, even though I do love it, and we've had a lot of fun doing some in-house tournaments and stuff like that. But the reason I'm nominating Donkey Kong is I can't think of the last time Donkey Kong had so much personality and flavor. When he like gets a goal and he just pops off doing some breakdancing and stuff. His different moves that are all just like banana themed, like his super attack where he like hits the ball in like a banana shaped motion to like get a goal. And he ended up being like my captain because I'd always put him in that front slot because he could immediately at the start of every play just like do his big tackle and like get me the ball like 90% of the time. Just He ended up being my anchor. So love Donkey Kong in Mario Strikers. Shouts
out to Donkey Kong. Love that dude as well. In all of his iterations. A cool guy. I am going to shout out one game and then I'm going to let you tear through this because half of my list is God of War.
Okay.
I'm just gonna be honest with you. Like, we just talked about God of War taking over the new characters. It's also gonna take over the old characters too. Trust me. Trust me. Bayonetta. This is one's going to be a surprise because it was one that I totally forgot to put on the games I played list at the top of our Game of the Year discussion. I can't believe I missed Bayonetta, but I've played some Bayonetta. And Bayonetta specifically in Bayonetta 3 is one of the cooler renditions of Bayonetta because your version of Bayonetta in Bayonetta 1 and 2 dies in the opening cutscene. And then you are thrown into this multiverse situation of all the Bayonettas that could be. And I think that is the most ridiculous situation that Platinum could have put in front of me for Bayonetta. And I did not expect to have like hyper pop Tokyo Bayonetta and medieval Bayonetta and all of these different versions of Bayonetta to play through like as I played this game. And I just thought it was the absolute coolest thing. Like, obviously it's always like she's the most posh girl in the like zone you're in, and she's always like done up to the absolute maximum. But the fact that you get to see a million different versions of one of the cooler characters in video games is amazing. I know there was a lot of...
Is that like a cutscene I could look up and watch, or is it like
you can see the different versions of Bayonetta? Yeah, you can look it up and see it.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, it is great to just see her in all of these different outfits. Essentially, like you get the costume changes abundant, but it's still like just the most sassy girl at her core every single time. And I Bayonetta's awesome. She's always been awesome. I know there's been a lot of hubbub around her voice actress, and I know that was definitely kind of problematic in multiple ways. But it sounds like that whole thing came to light. So not much to say there outside of what's already been said. But the new voice actress also does an excellent job. It's kind of hard to tell that it's not just Bayonetta again.
Right.
So the voice acting is also like quite good, despite all of the crazy stuff that happened with that this year. But as a character, you get to see every version of Bayonetta under the sun, and that's cool. It's kind of a blast. It's super fun.
Well, speaking of another Nintendo character that has a bunch of different versions, Kirby from Kirby and the Forgotten Land. So I brought this one up because one is like the genre shift for Kirby. Like there's been 3D like Air Ride and stuff like that, but to have like a game of this scale for Kirby, I think is so much fun. To finally move around in like a 3-dimensional space with Kirby is great. And you know, on top of the regular abilities that you would get with Kirby, they just do a ton of weird, wild stuff with Kirby in this game. Obviously, is in the trailers where you can suck up a vending machine and then shoot pop cans out of your mouth, or suck up like a safety cone and use that to like do a essentially bum drop type attack, or absorb a car and just drive around as like a Kirby car for an amount of time. So that's why I'm doing it, is because not only are those regular copy abilities fun with the layers of them and the wild stuff that goes on, but that mouthful mode, what they call it, too, is just like a really fun addition for Kirby. So I think this is... I can't wait to see what they do next with Kirby, and I hope they keep it another 3D game like this and just add more variety in there, more copy abilities, more crazy mouthful modes, and a different setting and all that stuff. So I just felt like this is a fun glow up for Kirby, who has like 4 or 5 games that release every year somehow, just random like ass games on the eShop, but most of them almost feel like shovelware, even though it's Nintendo first party. But this was like, okay, they finally went hard on a Kirby game for the first time in at least a good few years, and like on a console, like on a like home console version. So big shouts to Kirby.
I want to ask some Kirby questions here real quick, because I am definitely interested, and I've heard a lot of praise about this game this year. The last Kirby game I played was Epic Yarn.
Okay.
Which I felt was... Did you play that game?
No.
Oh, okay. Maybe
that's like the drawing one, right?
Yeah, it was like... not necessarily. It was just very... It felt like a game that I would want to play with like my nephew, who was like 4 years old.
Yeah, like Kirby and Yoshi are kind of like their first party games that are like, okay, these are truly designed for kids usually.
Yeah. But this game, will I get that kind of same like old school Kirby? Because I feel like old school Kirby games are actually pretty hard.
Yeah, there are a couple boss fights in this game that are genuinely challenging. That took us a couple tries, and I played this in co-op with my partner. There are, in terms of the base levels, if you're just trying to get through it, I don't think you're going to have much challenge. But when in terms of getting all of the like bonuses, like the three, like there's like multiple objectives in each level, that could be a bit challenging. But then I think the best part about it is that as you're going through the kind of overworld, going to the different main levels, you'll unlock like bonus challenge levels, and a lot of those are genuinely difficult. Either they are like platforming challenge things, or like combat, like gauntlets essentially, or just like puzzles essentially. We have to use this copy ability in a very specific way. So I think Kirby and the Forgotten Land is able to add a good amount of variety there and actually have some difficult moments in it as well. So
something for both groups of people, similar to a way that like a Mario game will have something for both groups of people. Okay, fantastic.
I mean, considering that the setting of this game is like post-apocalyptic, which feels so weird for Kirby. Like I think they were definitely trying to hit both audiences. They also have like multiple difficulties.
They went Sonic mode with this.
The two difficulties too. One of them's called like Easy Breezy, and one of them's I forget what the other one's called, but they're like funny names that like one of them is just like a simple Kirby experience, or just if you want like a little bit more, like it's called like Wild Mode or something. So it's like a little bit harder. So
all right, cool. I don't know. I mean, I'm definitely excited to jump into that one as well. Yeah, people have been kind of shouting that one from the rooftops a little bit. Sadly, I missed it. So, do you have another one that you would like to go for?
Sure. Maybe we'll go through
into God of War territory.
Yeah, let's do non-God of War, and then we'll once again leave that for the end. So
go crazy.
Midnight Suns here, which once again we just talked about how you have some issue with some of these characters here. I honestly wrote down a bunch, but I think I'll just, for the sake of this list, I'll put Magic, Nico, and Blade on here.
Those are good ones.
Yeah, Magic and Nico for me are, of all the Marvel stuff I've ever interacted with, don't know anything about them previous to this. So it's fun learning about their backstories, particularly with Magic, which I think is, I mean, both of them have pretty emotional like upbringings and trauma and stuff like that. But I think Magic is the one I've connected more with, and just I've done a lot of the hangouts and conversations with them, and I really like both their character backstories.
I've done the same, but the reason is because I joked about it the first day I played this game, and I was like, my girlfriend looks just like Magic.
Oh, really?
I was like, oh, this is lucky, because now I can have a crush on a video game character and not feel bad about it.
Love it. That's awesome. Yeah, I don't think my partner looks like any of the characters in this game particularly. No, I like that though. And then Blade, on the other hand, like I've definitely had a few iterations of Blade, but I've always kind of seen him as maybe more reserved, not so emotional guy, pretty serious, I would say.
Older too. This is a young Blade, it seems like.
Yeah, I guess so. He's probably like mid-20s maybe, or maybe late 20s.
He says that. He said, I identify with being like 25.
I see, right. But I think he's so surprising to me because he's actually like just he's such a softie in terms of just like you're having conversations with him, and he just like has this crush on Captain Marvel, and he's in conversation with her. He's, they're talking about books, and then like Captain America overhears, and then they end up starting an impromptu book club, but he just goes along with it because he like doesn't really want to admit that he was doing it because he had a crush on Captain Marvel and was just trying to talk to her. So he's just so like cute and soft and fuzzy, which is so opposite, especially like both him being like a vampire who like is like a part, has part vampire in him, but also just the other versions I've seen of him. So very much surprising me in that way. Voice acting, I think, in this game is fantastic across the board. I think Nico is actually the same voice actress from like the TV show, which I haven't watched, the Runaways TV show, so that's pretty cool too. I mean, I know Spider-Man 2 is Yuri Lowenthal again, who did like Spider-Man 2018 and Marvel Ultimate Alliance. He's just Spider-Man in video games, pretty much.
He's also Spider-Man in the Spider-Man games, the PlayStation ones, right?
In 28, in the Spider-Man, those new ones. I don't know. Yeah, he's played it in like I think a bunch of different projects at this point. So
he's a great Spider-Man. He's a fantastic Spider-Man.
I mean, even like I think Tony Stark does like a amazing Robert Downey. Like it's really, I don't know. I think the voice acting is great across the board.
That's the one where I hovered around. I was like, you were just being Robert Downey Jr.
That one's less inspired, but I think it actually is really good.
Yeah. I kind of wish that he was just like an entirely different Tony Stark.
That's fair. That's
the same way that like Doctor Strange isn't just what's his name?
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah, it's kind of a different kind of style. But yeah,
Yeah.
on top of all those character like story elements of it, Midnight Suns has done an amazing job of making every character feel totally unique, have a moveset that one lends to what their power set is and what they are as a person, but also just be strategically very interesting. Nico has a lot of randomness and also kind of high risk, high reward, where she has a lot of damage, but you just don't know exactly what her moves are going to be. Magic, teleporting around, portals. Like the more and more I've unlocked for that character, she can do some fucking wild stuff. Cool. It is crazy. And then Blade has a very kind of classic, kind of very agility focused thing with a lot of life steal, applies bleed to a lot of characters, and then deals more damage to characters that are bleeding, which makes sense. He's a vampire. So, yeah, like I just across the board, the movesets are fantastic. I only have one more character to unlock, but so far, every single one of them is like totally different and super cool, and loving that element.
If we are talking gameplay with these, I absolutely love the gameplay of all of these characters so much, and I would like toss Robbie Reyes into the gauntlet as well. Him as Ghost Rider, I think, is one of my favorite characters to utilize, and I didn't realize he would be. He does crazy damage. He throws out these like pits of fire that you can all like one shot entire and like like big boss enemies, almost like the mini boss characters in some of those fights. But my favorite thing is when you use the Hell Ride attack and he like jumps on top of his
it's so over the top.
He has one of my favorite like big moves in the entire game. He literally jumps on top of his like Camaro or whatever like old school car it is, with like the engine coming out of the hood of the car. He jumps on top of it and he's like driving through like 3 enemies. Like I've gotten the biggest multi-kill off of Robbie. Like I've literally taken out like 7 enemies or something,
and then it destroys all your cards too, all the other cards you had in your hand.
It's worth it. I'll destroy everything on the map to destroy and destroy some of my cards. But it's great when you have that as like your one or like one of 2 cards in your hand. It's just like, all right, I'll chuck the 1 card away to take out like 7 dudes. Gameplay wise, Marvel Midnight Suns is such a blast. It's love that game.
I think I'm happy with those ones being on the list. That's 4 characters. So that's a good amount, enough for us for conversation. I guess I'll keep going here because we're leaving God of War for the end. So Multiverses, of course, came out this year as well, and I wanted to shout this out because I think there's some really fun move sets in here. I think maybe my favorite character is Harley Quinn. I'm not really a big DC guy necessarily, but I think she just has a very fun moveset that lends to my kind of playstyle too. So I've found myself very attached to that character. Shaggy, I think, is just hilarious. Having Shaggy, who is essentially just like Captain Falcon, like even has the knee and everything. Like that's just such a funny way to make a moveset for Shaggy. But like, how else do you make a moveset for him? He like is pretty just regular guys. I think they did
run away from everything. He's scared, right?
Iron Giant, I think, is super cool. That I've never seen a platform fighter that's like, let's make a literal giant boss-like character that is also just balanced and fits in with the rest of the roster. Just because even Smash, like that was the thing for the longest time where they're like, we're never gonna put Ridley in because Ridley's too big. And like, Ridley is bigger than like Pichu or something. For the most part, the characters are within like whatever the bell curve of size, like they're not much different. But Iron Giant is legitimately just fucking huge compared to everyone else, which is super fun.
Towers over platforms.
And then lastly, I want to shout out Morty, one of the kind of DLC characters that has come out. Who I just love his moveset. Like his combo game is insane. He has kind of some weird mechanics as well, where he has like this essentially a grenade you throw out, and then his other moves can like hit that grenade and split it off. And there's just different ways you can combo that to just have all sorts of grenades going off, which is very fun as well. So yeah, those are my full Multiverses character shoutouts. A game that I like enough. I think it's a little rough around the edges, but I've still had a lot of fun, and I definitely go back to it when new characters come out. And they've already released like 6 new characters or something since the game came out in July. So obviously they're keeping it up. I liked a few of these characters quite a bit.
I'd love to dip back into that. My girlfriend is an absolute Smash savage, so like that style of game definitely goes strong in this household. I would love to
Nice.
see her thoughts on that and dig into some of these new characters.
Free to play. Check it out.
I know. I've played it. I'm just saying some of the new guys.
Gotcha. Yeah.
We opening the floodgates.
I have one more game.
All right. Let's
which
go.
is A Plague Tale Requiem.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah, a game that I've mentioned. I have some issues with it here or there, but the main cast, the main trio, honestly, kind of gets demoted to just a duo in this game with Amicia and Hugo. You know, the brother and sister combo of this game, and then Lucas is kind of your third in command, but he unfortunately disappears for most of the game. I'm still going to shout him out because for what he is there, he's pretty awesome. But yeah, Amicia and Hugo, that dynamic, the brother sister dynamic, especially because of where they start in the first game to where they are by the end of this one or the middle of this one, whatever you want to say. Like I just love that relationship that they have. It's such a genuine brother sister dynamic. I have an older sister, so being the younger brother, also, I don't know, there's an element to it of that I think I'm drawn to as well. For the characters, I think Hugo's he was the kind of protagonist of the first game. Of course, you played as Amicia, but it was like Hugo's story. In this game, I think they've done a really good job of contextualizing Amicia's story and her role in everything and making it more about her, even if still a lot of the plot stuff is happening to Hugo, who's kind of like the, chosen one sort of character. And then I mentioned that there's a lot of dealing with Amicia just being a fucking murderer in this game and how many people she kills. And that element, while I think it could be better, it's still, for the most part, well done and something that most games don't even bother to tackle. So I really like what they've done there. But particularly just like the last maybe 25% of the game, I think that element or that section and the way Amicia's character is elevated is just fantastic. And then once again, the voice acting from all three of them, especially because one of them is a kid. I don't know how old he is, but it's definitely a kid's voice. Like really, really good voice acting across the board. I wish the game had a better mocap and like facial, syncing with stuff, because I think that would help just elevate the quality of the story too. But the voice acting itself is fantastic.
Yeah, that seems like maybe the unbridged gap, because that game is beautiful.
Yes,
and the voice acting is incredible. So the only thing that they needed was maybe that incredible mocap to like just seal the deal, because that's essentially what is making God of War as good as it is it has both of those pieces, and it is also like connected.
Yeah, it's just like one less layer that you have of like potential disconnection, right? Like the more you can feel connected to the characters, the stronger that story is going to hit. So
for sure. I imagine it is quite the lift, though. I'm sure it's very, very expensive. So
it's true.
Still, shout outs to them. Like that's still one of those series that I absolutely want to dig into further. And yeah, man, it's so damn pretty.
Yeah. I think that's one too that, I mean, right now Xbox is dealing with the Activision Blizzard merger, so I don't think they can really get away with buying anyone else out right now, but I think that studio is probably going to get picked up. I mean, both their games are on Game Pass. They, are co-developer of Flight Simulator, so they're already kind of in-house a bit, so I think Xbox is going to pick them up at some point, so I cannot wait to see what they do with a bigger budget and more resources. I'm sure that they are, like, the games already look fucking amazing, with the exception of the mocap. So I think that'll just, I can't wait to see. Hopefully they skyrocket in the future if they do get bought out. Even if they don't, they're obviously on the up and up. So good for them. It is time to get into God of War. So should we just rifle off all the characters?
Yeah.
Do we need to talk about each one individually? I don't know if we need to, honestly.
Good, but we also... Here's maybe the best way to talk about these characters. Go back and listen to our spoiler cast. We dig into all of these characters a bunch, new and old. And both of us talked about all of these people at length. I think it would be pretty easy just to dig into these and rifle them off. And then as we get into cut and territory, maybe have some deeper conversations about them.
Let's go back and forth. Who's the first one?
Brock.
Okay, I'll go Sindri.
That's very apt. Freya.
I'll go Mimir.
Oh man, I didn't. Yeah. Atreus.
Kratos. That's actually all mine. Do you have any other ones other than
all
that?
mine as well. That's it.
Who?
That
Sorry?
went incredibly fast.
Oh
That's
no,
it.
are we lagging out again? Oh no. Okay, I think we're good. Sorry, what was that? Do you have one more character at the end?
No, that was it.
Okay,
That was
okay,
it. So
cool.
it was Brock, Freya, Atreus, Sindri, and Kratos.
Right. So a total of only was that 6 characters, 7 characters, 6 characters.
And Mimir.
Mimir. Okay, that's going to be our contenders list. So this should be easier. This is the smallest list. So quickly rifle this off for the fans. Donkey Kong from Mario Strikers, which is just thinking about that compared to God of War is such a funny thought.
Totally.
Bayonetta from Bayonetta 3. Kirby from Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Magic, Nico, Blade, and Robbie Reyes from Midnight Suns. Harley Quinn, Shaggy, Iron Giant, and Morty from Multiverses. Amisa, Hugo, Lucas from Plague Tale Requiem. And then Kratos, Atreus, Freya, Brock, Sindri, Mimir from God of War Ragnarok. To make some quick, easy cuts, I wanted to bring these up, of course, but, Donkey Kong, love you. You're not holding up with the likes of some of these other characters. Similarly, all these Multiverses characters, love them. They're not holding up the torch. And I think I'll get rid of Kirby too, honestly. This might be less game representation. Where's Bayonetta? Is that a top 5 contender, or was that kind of just a shout out for you?
She's really cool this time around, but I don't know. I'm looking at the rest of Bayonetta has a running if it's not a top 5 God of War.
I see what you mean. Okay, well, for me...
And that's me talking about Midnight Suns a little bit, because I do love... Actually, I'd say between Magic and Bayonetta for me for the Midnight Suns characters.
Okay. How about we put Magic in then? How about we pick Magic as the Midnight Suns rep, so to speak?
One of the more compelling characters in Midnight Suns, and one of those where I talked about how I said this off stream a little bit, but I am clicking through a lot of dialogue in Midnight Suns. Magic is one of the few situations where I'm not doing that.
Nice.
I really enjoy her story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm already... She's the one character that I have, friendship prestiged at this point, so I've definitely put a lot of time and hangouts and gifts over to her at this point. So
they actually surround her as a character often. Nico and Magic get a lot more play, I think, than the other ones do. Magic gets the birthday party, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's more just moments with that. Magic's opening that portal every damn time. She's got a really important job as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think with that though, I'm happy to drop the rest of the Midnight Suns crew. If it was my personal top 5, I might make a case for a Blade or a Nico, but I'm pretty happy to get a 1 rep on there for the time being. And the game's not done yet, so maybe I'll just grow to these characters even more. And also, I just unlocked Scarlet Witch. I'm liking her so far, but I just haven't spent as much time with her yet. But yeah.
I unlocked her 2 nights ago, and I haven't played since.
Oh, okay. So
I'm realizing I told you the last
far then. You're pretty far. I'm impressed.
Wolverine. I've been playing it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy when you don't have to play Callisto Protocol.
It's also, I guess it goes much quicker when you skip all the dialogue too.
That's true.
There's a lot of dialogue in that game. That's hilarious. Okay, from Plague Tale as well, I really want to see Amicia make it on this list. I really, really want to see Amicia make it. So I don't know if we can do that yet, but just to at least simplify the board, I'm going to take off the Hugos and Lucases of the world. So that leaves us with...
Let's go into God of War. Oh my God.
Yeah, we're in the God of War territory. This is really difficult because I look at these, and for every other category that we've had multiple reps from, it's okay, we can take off these 2 to simplify it. I can't look at this and immediately pick one that's that's the weakest link if we had to pick one and
there's one person who did not get as much shine in this game as they did in 2018, and I think I'm more comfortable letting them go in this group, even though they're one of my favorite characters in that series.
Is that Mimir?
Yeah. He just didn't get the same love this time around. He's definitely more of you get into his history and the side quests in this game more than you do dealing with him as a pivotal part of the story.
Yeah. I can agree with that. And I still love him, but like I think I would probably put him at 6th on this list. So I think that's a fair shake. Even if this list was our top 5 God of
Yeah.
War
Oh,
characters, he wouldn't quite make it. So
this is like 10 out of 10 characters. Like choose
Mhm.
your favorite or choose your top 1 or 2 top 10 character of all time.
And okay, to further move along here, I think for me, my next cut might be Freya, which of course all these cuts are difficult. The reason I would go with that one, I brought this up on one of our 2 reviews for this game, was that there was actually some parts where I thought the performance wasn't working for me, which in a game that has amazing performances, and I think she does in cutscene, but I found her non-cutscene dialogue, something about it was...
I can even tell you what it is.
What is it?
She is annoying whenever there is an objective to deal with in these games. She will be like, why don't you move 2 inches to the left? Why don't you do this?
Try parrying.
I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like,
I'm sure that's part of it, is she kind of annoys you too, right?
Atreus is maybe like your annoying child, so he doesn't bother you as much. But when it's just this grown woman who you're just like, why are you here if you're going to tell me every single thing I've done wrong or need to do differently along the way? Like it is a little frustrating how like much she is telling you what to do. In the same way that I think that is just like gameplay brokenness.
I mean, Mimir does it too. I mean, yeah, anyone who would be your companion in that game, it's a thing for sure.
The interesting part of why I think Freya, you were dealing with it more is I guess Mimir is with you in those moments, but like previously it's like Atreus and Mimir bouncing off of each other. I feel like when you're dealing with when Freya is there, it's just Freya.
Well, I think I honestly think part of that could just be from the actor's perspective. When they're doing those cutscenes, they're in mocap, likely with the other person in that scene. They're acting with them. For those things, they're probably just in a booth, like rifling shit off. And so, for example, when you're going through Vanaheim, it wasn't even just like the puzzle element of it, but it was just like all the dialogue there didn't work for me outside of the actual cutscene stuff. And I think that's probably part of it. So with that conversation being had, are you also okay with
I have one more piece that I think pulls her down the list.
Okay.
It's how aggressively she's just like, we need to go fucking to war.
Okay.
Over and over and over again, where everybody else is trying to find real solutions to the problem, and she's just like, let's just go there and kill them. Over and over and over again. She has just like this fury to her that is blinding and can be sadly a little annoying when people are actually like trying to figure things out.
Okay, now that we've shrunk this list down and we only need to cut 2 more, how do you feel about Bayonetta?
It's not going to win over any of the Ragnarok characters.
Okay.
She just won't.
Okay. Very quick sidebar.
Really great. Sorry, go ahead.
What do you think of the new Bayonetta game they announced at the Game Awards? You see that thing?
I didn't.
It's it's not Bayonetta 4 or something. It's like a top-down, like chibi, weird-looking thing.
How did I miss that entirely?
I forget what it's called. You should look up a trailer at some point.
I did have a really stilted watch of the Game Awards. I started watching it later, and I skipped through from in the first like 45 minutes. I skipped to each world premiere. So I might have missed it. But it was that's I'm curious. I'm curious to see what the hell that is.
I forget if Platinum's making it or if it's like some other studio doing it. But anyway,
Bayonetta is one of the cooler characters of all time, and I think they actually do her a tad dirty in 3 by killing her so early and then introducing you to all these other versions of Bayonetta. Right. But this is just still one of those situations where I will trust you with Amicia. Magic, I also think is really ties that those characters together. And then Ragnarok, this could be all 5 Ragnarok for me personally.
Yeah, it could. I think when I look at other lists, I want to represent Plague Tale in some way, and to me, this is like the way I want to do it, because I think Amicia is a really, really well-written character, very well acted, a character that I cannot wait to go on her journey in a future game if they choose to do that. And I think just when it comes to like her character elements and the arc she takes on this and shifting the lens of the story to make her role in it more of like a protagonist role, and she is just as important as the chosen one for a very different way. I thought that element of the story was super interesting. Really well done. They play a lot of parallels with someone else in the past who's been that chosen one, and there was like a protector character, and Amicia kind of following in those footsteps, I think is very interesting. So yeah, for me, like, I'm happy having three God of War picks, and then making room
What
for.
Does that make it
Amicia
like
on here.
6 total?
Yeah, what did we have? We had 3 in the other list too. So. But I mean, truly, like that, we're doing the best characters list, which is in a large part the best story, best game, best stories of the year, and God of War is definitely that. So yeah, it's kind of an all-encompassing sort of list. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you think there's room for Amicia?
Oh, absolutely. You have defended her amicably.
Yeah. As a quick spoiler, like that's not making it on my top 10 as well. So I feel like this is a good send off, good honorable mention. For the last time for Plague Tale of the Year. So there you go. So we're down to Kratos, Atreus, Brock, and Sindri, and we have to cut one, which feels difficult, right? Because these are kind of two pairings.
There's one lock.
Who's the lock for you?
It's Sindri.
Sindri. Okay.
Like, obviously, well, oh man, there are multiple here. Like, there's 2, but definitely Sindri. I think Sindri goes through grief in a crazy way. I feel like he is the key pillar to winning at the end.
Mm-hmm.
He is this really supportive character to Atreus in the beginning, and then he hates him in a way that I have not experienced a character hate someone in that way, in such a real way. Like he shuts him down in ways that feel really like, man, I hate the silent treatment to Atreus. This is hard to deal with. Like the way that he's just like hammering away and he's like, don't fucking talk to me.
I think it's pretty powerful too that they end the game without, like, it is a conclusion, but it doesn't feel like it. It's like you just have to live with the consequences of your actions. I think that was a pretty powerful decision to make too, considering that he doesn't pop up any side quest stuff like that. That scene, that's the last. He blips out, and that's him. That's who Sindri was, in that moment.
It's
so I agree with that. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff and character moments that come out of what happens with Brock here, but I think it's almost that, like him as the plot device, if you really want to simplify it, adds to these other characters' stories. But I don't know if him individually is going to rise above Kratos and Atreus' story here for me, or Sindri's. So is he?
Sindri and Brock could be a best character pick together, but it's truly Sindri has the ultimate sacrifice at the end, and it is Brock, and I think he continues to tell Brock's story in a way. So
just like his fate in the game.
Sad to see you go twice, bro.
Yeah, we had to do it to him, unfortunately.
Oh
no. There you go. Our best returning or character appearances, whatever you want to call it. Magic from Midnight Suns, Amicia from Plague Tale Requiem, and then from God of War we got Sindri, Kratos, and Atreus. So that means 6 total God of War picks. And I like that. I like that both the appearance and the the return debut and returning both had variety in terms of the other characters, in terms of games showing off there.
I know we didn't talk about them much, but if you were at all curious why Kratos and Atreus didn't even get mentioned when we're talking about best characters and they just slid their way up into the top 5, go listen to one of the numerous God of War podcasts we did.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things too where it's one of those things where if someone has only played 2018, they haven't gotten to Ragnarok yet. Like, I don't think they need even a question. They're like, oh yeah, I'm sure that those characters were really well done again.
So. They double down and they make them
Mhm.
exceptional characters, and I think it is an amazing conclusion to Kratos' story.
I agree. If it is a conclusion at all, we will, remains to be seen what happens on there in the future.
I hope so. I think it would be a good, nice bow, but I hear you.
Dante, this is so much fun. We've crushed it. We did our lists, a bit of a different format this year. Everyone, let us know what you think about this. Do you like the individual episodes? Do you like us doing kind of maybe a bit quicker, but 4 lists in one? I don't know. Let us know.
Was it quicker?
This was not quicker. No, this was more runtime than our first one. But maybe something's like, I'm just curious about levels. I'll just hop into that episode or whatnot. However people want to engage with it, they can. But
give you options.
But yeah, you got to check out the top 10 lists of the year. Very excited for that. We're going to be doing that in the next few days-ish, a week, whatever it is. But yeah, thank you everyone so much for listening. Dante, thank you so much for all the time you've given me here on this Saturday to get these 2 episodes put together. And yeah, thank you to whoever, Travis Kirklin, whoever was in this episode, giving their top games as well. Still figuring that out. And yeah, we will be back soon for the conclusion of the 2022 Game of the Year discussions. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.